I remember stepping into the grand hall, my heart hammering with anticipation. It was my cousin's wedding, a celebration that should have lifted my spirits. But as soon as I crossed the threshold, I felt invisible. Laughter bubbled around me, voices mingling in cheerful chaos, and yet I was nothing more than a shadow among the crowd. Then it happened. My aunt, standing at the center of a small circle of relatives, glanced in my direction and said with a casual flicker of a smile, "Well, some of us lead rather unremarkable lives, don't we?" Her words cut sharper than a blade, landing squarely in the open in front of everyone. The room shifted in an instant. Snickers rippled outward, eyes darting toward me, whispers weaving like a noose tightening around my chest. I forced a laugh, a hollow sound swallowed immediately by the giggles around me. But the sting didn't fade. It burned, hot and insistent, a pulse that throbbed in my veins. I caught fragments of conversations, sharp little shards aimed at me. Has she actually done anything noteworthy? Does she even have a career? She always seems lost. Each whisper landed like a stone against fragile glass. And then I saw it. My aunt's face, calm and unbothered, the way she always had this uncanny ability to twist words to wound. A memory flared. Childhood birthdays, family dinners, moments when she turned the smallest slip into humiliation, when her silence cut deeper than words ever could. She had perfected the art of watching me falter, waiting for that perfect moment. I opened my mouth, tried to defend myself, but she dismissed me with that patronizing smile that always left me powerless. The humiliation was complete, public, and intimate all at once. I felt frozen, trapped under a glass dome of judgment, every eye subtly aligned against me. I slipped away to the garden, desperate for air, my chest heaving as the laughter from the hall reached me in waves, echoing, mocking. The night was cool, yet my mind burned. Every glance, every word from her earlier replayed with relentless precision. I sat on a bench, clutching my hands together, feeling the invisible chains tighten around me, each link forged from years of ignored pain. That night, alone in my room, the echoes refused to fade. Her laughter haunted me, a cruel lullaby, and I realized with chilling clarity, she had always known the exact buttons to press. And now, decades of silent observation, of unnoticed slights, had come to a head. I was humiliated, yes, but in that sharp, aching pain, something else stirred. A quiet, simmering resolve fueled by every word she had ever wielded against me. The first seed of reckoning had been planted. Memories came rushing back like a tide I had tried to forget. I could see it all so clearly. Childhood dinners where her silence spoke louder than anyone's words. Plates clinked, conversations flowed, and there she sat, watching me stumble over my sentences, watching me fall short of some invisible standard, and saying nothing. That silence, sharp and deliberate, had shaped me more than any word ever could. I remembered the times I came to her for advice, hoping for guidance, a flicker of encouragement, only to be met with indifference or a subtle smirk that cut deeper than any criticism. "Maybe that's just how you are," she'd say once, letting the words linger like a stone in my chest. Each time I left her presence smaller, my confidence chipped away, layer by layer. She had witnessed every heartbreak, every failure, every dream I tried and failed to realize, and still she remained silent. No consolation, no intervention, no acknowledgement, just that cold, measured watchfulness that made me question my own worth. Then I remembered the betrayal I had never confronted. She had access to family secrets that could have protected me, secrets that might have prevented years of humiliation and struggle, but she chose not to act. The knowledge hit me anew, burning with a mixture of anger and disbelief. My early adult years had been a constant battle. Financial struggles, emotional turbulence, professional setbacks. And through it all, I knew she was watching. Not helping, not guiding, just observing, as if cataloging every misstep, every vulnerability, every failure. Trust in her had always been a fragile thread, stretching thinner with each silent act, fraying until it nearly snapped. I saw the way she orchestrated favor toward my cousins, the subtle nods, the whispered approvals, the gentle encouragements she withheld from me. I was sidelined, diminished, and she either allowed it or planned it, all without ever lifting a finger. The humiliation I felt at the wedding that night was not an isolated incident. It was decades in the making, the culmination of years of quiet manipulation and calculated indifference. The pieces fell into place with brutal clarity. And then it hit me. Her silence wasn't just indifference. It was power. A weapon she wielded masterfully, shaping lives without ever opening her mouth. I had underestimated her for years, blind to the sharp edge of her quiet control. Under the pale light of the moon, sitting alone in the garden where I had fled that night, I made a silent vow. One day, the balance would shift. One day, her silence would no longer hold the power. It would be the very thing that unravels her. The reckoning had been planted, and I would see it through. I stopped reacting and started watching. Every routine of hers became a pattern I memorized. The mornings she hosted coffee for her circle, the evenings she made strategic phone calls, the way she positioned herself at gatherings to stay admired and untouchable. I paid attention to her pauses, her tone shifts, the moments her confidence relied on silence rather than substance. I researched everything quietly. Her financial habits, the way she handled money with certain relatives but not others. The family dynamics she pretended were organic but clearly controlled. Even her friendships. I learned who depended on her approval and who feared losing it. Every detail sharpened the image of who she really was behind the composed exterior. I tested the waters carefully. One afternoon, I mentioned an old slight in passing, my voice calm, almost curious. "Do you remember when you told everyone I wouldn't amount to much?" I asked lightly. She smiled, dismissive as ever. "You're too sensitive," she replied, waving it off like dust. That reaction told me everything. She didn't see me as a threat. Inside, I wrestled with myself. Anger burned hot, but there was also a reluctant admiration for her cunning. She had ruled quietly for years, shaping narratives without ever raising her voice. Understanding that duality made me stronger, more precise. I began gathering allies carefully, selectively, cousins who had felt overlooked, neighbors who had seen her arrogance slip when no one important was watching, old friends who remembered how she belittled others behind closed doors. I didn't recruit loudly. I listened. And they spoke. The sabotage started small, almost invisible. A suggestion I knew would backfire, framed as helpful advice. A nudge that caused her to make a poor decision publicly. She never suspected me. She thought she was still in control. I attended every social gathering with new eyes, studying how she curated her image, how she redirected attention, how she weaponized charm. I learned the choreography of her manipulation, every calculated step. The tension inside me grew, but so did my confidence. Decades of ignored pain transformed into focus. I was no longer shrinking under her presence. I was standing taller, quieter, sharper. I documented everything. Her hypocrisies, the small lies she told different people, the favoritism she denied but practiced relentlessly. Dates, words, reactions, nothing escaped me anymore. Each day, the blueprint in my mind became clearer. This wasn't rage anymore. This was strategy. And for the first time in my life, I knew exactly how her silence would finally betray her. The call came late at night, the kind that makes your stomach tighten before you even answer. A distant family member's voice trembled on the other end, hesitant, guilty. Then the truth spilled out. She had profited from my mistakes. Every failure I thought was mine alone had quietly benefited her, financially, strategically, deliberately. The room felt smaller as the words sank in. A shockwave tore through me. All those years of silence weren't passive. They were calculated. She hadn't just watched me struggle. She had positioned herself to gain from it. My pain had been convenient. My losses had been her leverage. The anger I'd buried for years rose fast, then settled into something colder, sharper. Clarity. I finally understood the shape of the game she'd been playing, and I knew exactly what had to be done. I reached out to a friend I trusted, someone who had survived their own quiet war. I didn't ask for comfort. I asked for direction. Don't rush, they told me. Patience, precision. Let people see the truth themselves. Exposure works best when it feels inevitable. Their words didn't calm me. They focused me. When the call ended, I let myself break. I cried for every moment she ignored my pain, every time she stood by while I was blamed, diminished, isolated. The tears weren't weakness, they were release. I wiped my face and felt lighter, steadier, ready. The next time I saw her, I didn't confront her directly. I hinted, a comment here, a question there, just enough to suggest I knew more than I should. Her eyes flickered for half a second, unease cracking through her perfect composure. She noticed. She felt it. That was the moment everything shifted. For the first time, I wasn't reacting to her. She was reacting to me. The control she'd held for years loosened, and I felt it slip into my hands. I understood then that revenge didn't need to be loud. It didn't need shouting or scenes. It could be surgical, emotional, final, the kind that leaves no room for denial. Quietly, meticulously, I began assembling every piece. Evidence, timing, witnesses. I didn't rush, I didn't stumble. I waited for the exact moment when the truth would land with maximum force, when her silence would finally have nowhere left to hide. The day arrived. I had arranged a family gathering under the guise of celebration, but the air was electric with anticipation I alone could feel. Every detail was planned. Seating, timing, who would be present, and I knew exactly how to reveal her manipulations without raising immediate suspicion. As relatives arrived, I noticed their subtle curiosity, sensing the tension beneath my calm. Slowly, deliberately, I began to reveal the truths she had spent years burying. Cousins and friends leaned in, eyes widening as one revelation followed another. Small betrayals, favoritism, hypocrisies she had long masked with charm. I presented evidence carefully. Documented instances of profiteering, proof of favoritism, the emotional wounds she had inflicted, all laid out like pieces of a puzzle that finally made sense. Each fact landed with the weight of inevitability, a hammer striking against the illusion she had maintained for decades. She tried to regain composure, smoothing a forced smile, straightening her posture, but it was too late. The room had shifted. Eyes no longer followed her lead, no longer deferred silently to her authority. The power she had wielded effortlessly began to crumble. Then came the legal revelation, a carefully timed disclosure that exposed financial misdeeds she had assumed would remain hidden. Gasps filled the room. Whispers multiplied. I watched as the meticulous image she had curated for years began to fracture in real time. Her social standing collapsed slowly, painfully, each step echoing the humiliation she had inflicted on me all those years. I felt no glee, only the cold, steady satisfaction of justice taking its due course. I spoke next, my voice carrying through the room. Measured, pointed, emotionally charged. I reframed our shared history, recounting moments she had twisted, revealing them in context that no one could ignore. Each word struck with precision, a mirror held up to her long-hidden duplicity. Her reaction was instantaneous. Disbelief, shame, then finally, silent acknowledgement of defeat. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. The authority she had exercised for decades evaporated in the space of a single gathering. Family members who had once doubted me, who had once laughed at my failures or overlooked my struggles, now witnessed my strength. Resilience, patience, strategy, they saw it all laid bare. The room pulsed with tension, cinematic in its clarity. Every gaze, every whisper, every glance at her faltering composure reinforced the reversal of power. Justice had arrived, not as chaos, but as inevitability. I felt the weight of every year of humiliation lift, replaced by the sharp, undeniable satisfaction of long-awaited reckoning. The room had emptied, but the air still felt heavy with unspoken acknowledgement. I could sense it. She no longer held the silent power that had loomed over me for years. Her composure, once untouchable, was gone. Alone, I reflected on the cost of patience, planning, and emotional endurance. Every calculated step, every moment of restraint, every sleepless night spent observing and waiting, it had all led to this. The price had been high but necessary. Relationships began to rebalance. Some bonds severed under the weight of revealed truths, irreparably broken by decades of manipulation. Others strengthened, tempered by honesty and newfound respect. Truth, once hidden, had reshaped our family dynamics. I watched my aunt retreat into quiet contemplation. The aura of control she had cultivated for decades was shattered. I could see the tension in her shoulders, the hesitation in her gaze. For the first time, she was not the architect of the room. She was simply a participant in its reality. I reclaimed my sense of self-worth. No longer defined by her judgment or indifference, I felt a lightness I hadn't known in years. Each breath was freer, each thought clearer, each step more confident. Family interactions slowly normalized. Conversations held a new weight of respect, honesty, and courage. People listened differently now, seeing me as someone who had endured, observed, and finally acted. I invested in my personal and professional life with renewed vigor. Every project, every relationship, every decision was a testament to the fact that silence isn't always weakness. Strength can be quiet, patient, deliberate. The emotional scars remained, faint yet persistent reminders of the years spent under her gaze. But the power imbalance had been corrected. I felt the scales finally tipping toward justice. I journaled the experience, documenting not just the events but the lessons, the strategies, the emotional journey. It was both a personal victory and a narrative one, a story of endurance, insight, and eventual reckoning. Alone in the quiet of my room, I allowed myself a long moment of reflection. Satisfaction mingled with somber acknowledgement of the years lost to her silence. But even in that melancholy, there was clarity. I had survived, endured, and emerged stronger. The reckoning was complete, and I was finally free. I leaned closer to the camera, my voice trembling yet steady, carrying every ounce of the journey I've endured. Patience, I begin. Observation and emotional intelligence. These are weapons often overlooked, yet they shape the outcomes of our lives more than we realize. I pause, letting the weight of my words settle. Silence can be a weapon, I continue, but awareness can turn it against the wielder. What was meant to harm can, in the right hands, reveal the truth. My advice, I say, is to document every injustice, no matter how small. Each note, each memory, each record builds your own power. Awareness is the first step to reclaiming control. Leaning back slightly, I fix the camera with intensity. Revenge isn't about cruelty. It's about restoring balance. It's about dignity. It's about turning the scales back toward justice when they've been tipped against you for far too long. I gesture subtly, inviting reflection. Look around your own life. Recognize the toxic dynamics. Plan strategically. Don't act in haste. Act with clarity. A rhetorical question hangs in the air. How long would you wait for the truth to surface? How long before patience becomes the instrument of revelation? I soften my tone, inviting engagement. Comment below if you've ever faced silent betrayal and tell me how you overcame it. Let's share these stories, because silence should never be allowed to dominate our lives. The camera captures the sunlight breaking through the curtains behind me, casting warm beams that slice through the shadowed room. A visual metaphor for clarity, freedom, and emerging strength. A subtle smile forms as I leave a hint for the next tale. Sometimes the quietest people hold the loudest power, and sometimes that power can be turned against them. I let the frame linger, the light shifting across my face, leaving viewers with suspense, anticipation, and the promise that the next story of revelation and justice is just around the corner.